Have you heard about the brothers who shocked the United States by being convicted of the brutal murder of their own parents? The case of the Menendez brothers is not just a crime story, but also one of dark family secrets and a courtroom battle full of twists and turns. In this video, we will explore all the details of this shocking tragedy. What led Erik and Lyle Menendez to commit this brutal crime? Was it an act of revenge against years of abuse, or merely a cold plan to secure their million-dollar inheritance? Get ready to dive deep into one of the most disturbing cases in American criminal history. On the night of August 20th, 1989, the silence of the Menendez family's luxurious mansion in Beverly Hills was shattered by devastating gunfire. Erik and Lyle Menendez, only 18 and 21 years old, entered the living room where their parents, José and Kitty, were relaxing and watching television, and brutally executed them with a 12-gauge shotgun. The scene was so grotesque that, initially, the police believed it to be a violent home invasion. What no one could have imagined was that the very children who would later cry in public and do everything to appear as innocent victims were responsible for this family tragedy. Shortly after the crime, Lyle Menendez called 911 in an apparent state of despair, screaming that someone had murdered his parents. The audio of the call would soon become one of the most iconic moments of the case. At first, the police treated the incident as a possible robbery followed by homicide, especially given the fact that the Menendez family was extremely wealthy and influential. José Menendez was a successful executive in the entertainment industry, with a considerable fortune, which made the possibility of a crime motivated by money quite plausible. In the days following the murder, the brothers took on the role of devastated children mourning their loss. They organized lavish funerals, gave emotional statements to the press, and continued to appear publicly as victims. However, something peculiar caught the attention of both investigators and the media. The brothers' behavior seemed to quickly diverge from what was expected of grieving people. While the case was still under investigation, Erik and Lyle began spending exorbitant amounts of money, buying sports cars, luxury watches, and designer clothes. They even opened a restaurant. The extravagant lifestyle, just after their parents' deaths, led authorities to begin suspecting their true intentions. The public, in turn, was fascinated by the combination of wealth, power, and tragedy. How could it be that two seemingly well-adjusted young men were responsible for something so monstrous? The press explored every detail, from the fortunes spent to the luxurious places where the brothers were seen. TV shows and tabloids began speculating about the possibility of the brothers being involved in the crime, heightening the public clamor for answers. The massive media coverage helped turn the Menendez case into a national spectacle. As weeks went by, the police intensified their investigations, and as more information surfaced, suspicions surrounding the Menendez brothers grew. There were no signs of forced entry in the house, and detectives noted that, despite the brutality of the crime, nothing of value had been taken from the residence, contradicting the initial theory of a robbery. Investigation details began to leak to the press, and soon the image of the Menendez brothers as grieving victims began to crumble, raising a new question. Had they murdered their own parents in pursuit of wealth and freedom? The public reaction shifted from sympathy to shock, and headlines now focused on the brothers' hedonistic lifestyle, their dark motives, and ultimately, their arrest. People wondered, how could two young men who had everything, money, status, and a promising future, be capable of such a violent and ruthless act? As the police began to investigate more deeply, inconsistencies arose in the brothers' accounts, especially regarding the supposed robbery they initially attempted to stage. There were no signs of forced entry, and the valuable items in the house, jewelry, money, and expensive electronics, were all intact. Additionally, the Menendez brothers did not exhibit the typical behavior of individuals traumatized by a violent invasion. Suspicion grew when detectives discovered that, after the murder, Lyle and Erik began spending large sums of money from their parents' inheritance. The investigation revealed that, in the weeks following the crime, the brothers spent over $1 million on luxury items and trips. Lyle purchased a Porsche and Rolex watches, while Erik invested in tennis lessons with one of the country's most expensive coaches. They frequented upscale restaurants, bought designer clothes, and even attempted to start a fast food business. The Menendez brothers' behavior caught the attention of investigators, who began to question their true motivations. As the police gathered evidence, the brothers continued to behave carefree. This cold and indifferent attitude only fueled investigators' suspicions further. It wasn't long before the theory of a premeditated murder aimed at securing their inheritance began to take shape, especially after Erik's psychologist, Dr. Oziel, recorded confessions and later shared the information with his mistress, who threatened to expose the brothers unless he reported the crime to authorities. The recordings of Erik's confessions were used by the police to build a solid case against both brothers. Lyle was arrested first while walking near the family home in Beverly Hills. A few days later, Erik, who was playing tennis in Israel, voluntarily returned to the United States and was also detained. The brothers' arrest was a moment that shocked the nation, not only because of the brutal nature of the crime, but also because of the coldness with which both faced the charges. The prosecution quickly indicted them for first-degree murder, claiming the crime had been carefully premeditated with the intent to inherit the vast Menendez fortune, valued in the millions. The brothers' defense, however, adopted an unexpected strategy. They did not deny the murder but argued that they acted in self-defense after years of physical, emotional, and sexual abuse perpetrated by their father, José Menendez. This line of defense completely transformed the dynamics of the case, raising complex questions about family abuse, trauma, and justice in domestic violence situations. The nation was divided. Had the brothers acted to protect themselves, or was the abuse argument a desperate strategy to avoid the death penalty? The trial of the Menendez brothers began in 1993 and quickly became one of the most closely followed media events in the United States, drawing public attention and turning into a true media circus. With cameras broadcasting every detail of the courtroom live, viewers were fascinated by the story of two privileged young men who, according to the prosecution, had killed their own parents for money. At the heart of the case, however, was the narrative of abuse, a controversial argument that divided public opinion. The defense claimed that the brothers endured years of physical, emotional, and sexual abuse at the hands of their father, José Menendez, and that their mother, Kitty, was neglectful and often complicit in the abusive behavior. According to the defense attorneys, the brothers believed they were about to be killed by their parents, which led them to commit the crime in a desperate act of self-protection. This claim brought to light an intense debate about the dynamics of abuse within seemingly perfect and high society families. Experts were called to testify about the psychological impact that severe abuse can have on young people and how it can distort their perception of imminent danger. On the other hand, the prosecution portrayed Lyle and Erik as calculating murderers, motivated solely by greed. According to the prosecutors, the murder was meticulously planned so that they could inherit their parents' fortune, and the abuse argument was nothing more than a desperate attempt to escape the death penalty. They argued that the brothers' exorbitant spending immediately after the crime, including luxury cars, trips, and risky investments, proved that their motive was financial, not self-protective. The public, which initially viewed the brothers as cruel monsters, began to divide as more details about the possible abuse emerged. The trial not only explored the complexities of the crime itself but also touched on deep social issues such as the impact of trauma, domestic violence, and the credibility of abuse allegations in criminal contexts. During the trial, both Lyle and Erik Menendez made the difficult decision to testify in their own defense, a choice that carried enormous risks. It was at this moment that the public saw a different side of the brothers. Their detailed descriptions of the abuse they allegedly suffered at the hands of José Menendez, a man who appeared successful and respected in the eyes of society, shocked the courtroom. Lyle was the first to testify, describing the psychological control his father exerted over the entire family, which he claimed included a series of sexual abuses from his childhood. He spoke about the constant feeling of fear he lived with, detailing how José used his power and influence to manipulate and silence everyone. Lyle told the jury that on the night of the murders, he and Erik believed they were about to be killed by their father, a man who, in Lyle's words, had become increasingly volatile and dangerous. The emotions displayed during his testimony were intense and palpable, leaving the courtroom in silence. The public watched closely, divided between compassion for his story and disbelief at the brutality of the murders. Erik, more emotional and visibly more fragile, followed his brother in court, corroborating the accounts of abuse and adding his own experience of suffering. He described how he tried multiple times to tell others about what was happening, but was always silenced by the fear of retaliation. His heartfelt testimony led many to question the true dynamics within the Menendez family, bringing to light discussions about how abuse can destroy the psyche and lead to extreme actions. However, the prosecution, aiming to undermine the brothers' credibility, pointed to the absence of physical evidence supporting the abuse claims. They argued that the accounts could have been fabricated as a defense strategy and that the crime was, in fact, motivated by greed. The contrast between the horrific nature of the murders and the emotionally charged accounts of abuse created a dense and complex narrative that kept the public captivated and sparked intense debates in and out of the courtroom. The media coverage surrounding the Menendez case was intense and constant, turning the trial into a true public spectacle. The brothers, who had already become notorious figures in the months following the murder, were now seen daily on millions of television screens. The live broadcasting of the hearings, something relatively new for the public, allowed people across the country to witness the unfolding events and form their own opinions about the case. Talk shows, news broadcasts, and tabloids fed off the sensationalism surrounding the brutal details of the murders, the family's wealth and social status, and the allegations of abuse. The narrative of the case, filled with family drama, betrayal, and violence, captured the public's attention, who were divided between viewing the brothers as victims of an abusive childhood or as cold, calculating murderers. Media personalities explored every detail, and even psychologists and legal experts were invited to weigh in, further fueling speculation about the verdict. The trial was not just taking place in the courtroom, it was also being judged by public opinion, which formed its own theories about what really happened in the Menendez home. The media's role was crucial in shaping perceptions of the case. Initially, many saw Erik and Lyle as greedy young men who killed their parents for money. But as details of the alleged abuse began to emerge, some started to question whether the violence could have been an act of desperation. This duality, of villains or victims, made the case even more intriguing for the public. Each twist in the trial was widely discussed on television shows, in newspapers, and in magazines, keeping the case alive in people's minds and transforming it into one of the greatest criminal phenomena of the time. After months of intense deliberations, the verdict was finally announced in 1996. The Menendez brothers were found guilty of first-degree murder, and the court sentenced them to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The outcome of the trial generated a wave of reactions among the public and the press. For many, the verdict represented a victory for justice, as the brothers were seen as guilty of a heinous crime. However, there was also a segment of the population that expressed frustration, believing that the abuse allegations were not adequately considered, and that the true complexity of the case was not fully understood by the jury. The emotional impact of the conviction was profound. Erik and Lyle Menendez were separated and sent to different prisons, where they would serve their sentences in isolation. Their lives, once marked by luxury and privilege, would now become a landscape of despair and regret. Over time, both faced difficulties adjusting to life in prison, dealing with the emotional pressure and stigmatization that came with their status as infamous killers. Media coverage did not end with the verdict. The Menendez story continued to be explored in documentaries, books, and television programs, perpetuating public fascination with the case. As the years went by, new discussions emerged around mental health, the impact of family abuse, and the complexities of the justice system. The Menendez case became an example of how stories of abuse can be complicated and often overlooked in the criminal context, raising questions that still resonate in contemporary society. The case of the Menendez brothers not only shocked the nation in the 1990s, but also left a lasting legacy in popular culture and discussions about crime, abuse, and mental health. What began as a brutal murder evolved into a broader debate about the consequences of domestic abuse and the failures of the justice system to address the complexities of family dynamics. As new generations become aware of the story, It serves as a reminder of the profound impact trauma can have on individuals and society as a whole. The Menendez brothers became symbols of a deeper issue, the struggle of many abuse victims who, like them, may feel trapped. The case raised questions about the validation of victims' experiences, especially in contexts where the abuse is perpetrated by individuals who possess power and influence. The fact that two seemingly privileged young men could have lived such horror in their home lives challenged the common perception that abuse is limited to low-income families or people without social status. Moreover, the case had a significant impact on the media and how crimes are covered. The merging of a criminal narrative with emotional and psychological aspects turned the trial into a spectacle that not only attracted audiences but also provoked critical reflections on human nature. It became a benchmark for future crime coverage, where exploring social and psychological context became as important as the details of the crime itself. The Menendez brothers continue to be a topic of discussion in books, documentaries, and even dramatizations, showing how their lives and the tragic fate of their parents still resonate. This case sparked an ongoing dialogue about justice, accountability, and the complexities of family relationships, which remains relevant in our understanding of human dynamics and the legal system today. The legacy of the Menendez brothers transcends the specific case of their crimes and subsequent conviction. They have become a symbol of the fight against the silence surrounding family abuse and the devastating impact it can have on the lives of victims. With the growing awareness of mental health issues and domestic violence, the case serves as an example of how vital it is to give a voice to those who suffer in silence, especially when it comes to complex family dynamics. As society becomes more aware and informed about abuse and its ramifications, there is hope that cases like the Menendez will help promote changes in the justice system and how victims are treated. The discussion about the need for resources for prevention and intervention in abuse cases is becoming increasingly relevant. The public is beginning to understand that, while violence is often addressed in a punitive manner, the true solution lies in education, therapy, and creating support networks for survivors. The case also raises questions about ethics in media coverage and the role of public opinion in shaping criminal narratives. With the rise of social media and real-time crime coverage, the landscape has changed significantly since the 1990s. The way cases are presented now has the potential to directly influence public perception and ultimately the outcome of investigations and trials. This makes it even more crucial that stories of abuse are treated with sensitivity and a deeper understanding of the nuances involved. As new generations explore the story of the Menendez brothers, the case continues to provoke debates about morality, justice, and empathy. The lessons learned from it are essential in shaping a society that values truth and justice while caring for the human experiences that shape our actions. Ultimately, the story of the Menendez brothers reminds us of the importance of listening to and understanding the voices of those who struggle against oppression and violence, and ensuring that everyone has the opportunity to seek justice and healing. Since their conviction, the lives of the Menendez brothers have continued to be marked by challenges and changes. Lyle and Erik, now in their 50s, have faced the reality of their long sentences, but have also adapted to prison life in surprising ways. They have become known among other inmates, and over time, each has found a way to cope with their situation. The struggle for a deeper understanding of their experiences and the reasons that led them to crime remains a central theme in their lives. Lyle, for example, has devoted himself to activities that help occupy his mind, such as studying and even writing. He has expressed in various interviews a desire for his experiences to serve as a warning to others who may be going through similar situations. Erik, on the other hand, has focused on his mental health, seeking support and therapy within the prison system. Both brothers have tried to use their life stories as a form of reflection and learning, even though the circumstances are extremely difficult. Moreover, public interest in their lives has not diminished over the years. Documentaries and television programs continue to explore the case, bringing forth new interviews, analyses, and discussions about the impact of the crime and its consequences. The search for answers about what really happened in the Menendez home and how two young men could reach such an extreme point remains alive in popular culture. With the increasing attention to mental health and trauma in abuse contexts, the Menendez story can serve as a catalyst for broader discussions about what it means to be a victim, the complexities of abuse, and the importance of empathy. Thus, The future of the Menendez brothers is not just about them as individuals, but about how their lives and experiences can contribute to a deeper understanding of the issues surrounding abuse and domestic violence in contemporary society. The legacy of the Menendez case will continue to resonate as society seeks ways to address the complex dynamics of abuse, accountability, and forgiveness, ensuring that the voices of survivors are always heard and that discussions about justice evolve to include greater compassion and understanding. The case of the Menendez brothers stands out as a powerful and complex narrative that provokes deep reflections on human nature, family dynamics, and justice. Their story is not just about a shocking crime, but also about the dark realities that often lie hidden beneath the surface of seemingly normal families. The exploration of trauma, abuse, and its consequences reminds us that behind every violent act, there may be a story of pain and suffering that deserves to be understood. In reflecting on the legacy of the Menendez brothers, it is crucial to recognize the importance of maintaining an open dialogue about issues of abuse and mental health. The case challenged society to consider the voices of victims and the complexities of situations that can lead to extreme actions. With the growing awareness of domestic violence and child abuse, there is a unique opportunity to work toward meaningful changes in policies, education, and support for victims. For the public, the story of the Menendez brothers should serve as an invitation to empathy and reflection. It is essential to listen to and support those who fight against the silence of abuse, ensuring that their experiences are validated and that they receive the necessary help for healing. Each of us can play a role in building an environment where people feel safe to speak out and seek help. As the Menendez case continues to be analyzed and discussed, may we learn from the lessons it brings and strive to promote a future where compassion and understanding prevail. Let us ensure that the story of the Menendez brothers is not confined to a crime but expands into a movement toward justice, empathy, and support for victims of abuse. The dialogue must continue, and we all have a role to play in the pursuit of a safer and more welcoming world. Regardless of which side you believe, the case of the Menendez brothers remains a powerful lesson about dysfunctional family dynamics and the extreme consequences that can arise when these tensions reach a breaking point. The case of the Menendez brothers exemplifies how a family's darkest secrets can have devastating consequences. Was it justice or revenge? Share your opinion in the comments, and let's continue this fascinating discussion. Thank you for watching. If you found this video interesting, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, activate the notification bell to receive updates on upcoming videos, and give a like and comment below. Do you think the Menendez brothers deserved life in prison? Share your thoughts and let's debate together.